This episode of the Linux Action Show is brought to you by the good-looking folks at Godaddy.com. Use our code Linux and save yourself some cash. And welcome to the Linux Action Show, Season 21, Episode 9. My name is Chris, and joining me this week is Matt.
I'm not Brian, but I am here.
No, we were shooting this episode early this week with Mother's Day on Sunday. We got to make room for the moms. You got to clear out. That's one rule you got to follow, especially as you become a father.
That's true.
And so we rejuggled the schedule, and Brian couldn't make it.
I was part of the juggling process.
Yeah, but you know what, Matt? You're sitting down and joining us for a show, and we're going to have a ton of fun this week.
Absolutely.
And we're going to kind of embrace the change up a little bit, and we're going to do a few things a little different, including I've got a totally new category of app pick that I'll do only in this episode.
You're going to love this.
And I hope so.
I think so.
And we've also got all kinds of how-to information we're going to get to, and if everything holds out, although I'm a little skeptical it's going to happen. At the end of the show, we're going to do some live hangouts and take some questions and chat with people live on air, if it works out.
I think, and if we can make that work, I think that's going to be a great way to interact.
Yeah. So. All right. Well, before we get to that, I want to tell you about my Linux pick this week because you're not going to believe it. I've covered so many different things that Linux could possibly run on.
Really?
A rocket. This rocket runs Linux, man.
You're kidding me.
No, I'm serious. This is a rocket that runs Linux, and
we're talking like Linux with the Penguin and the Linus and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Wow. And don't forget the GNU /.
No, exactly.
Here in this one, they start out giving you some history about rockets in general, which is plenty interesting. But when you actually scroll down, you discover that a student graduate project is in the works, and down here they've got the diagram of the rocket, and here you go. They're calling it the LV2. And it ended up with a 32-bit processor running Debian Linux 2.4. Our launch tower became another Linux box, and we had a field server routing packets between the rocket and the launch control tower.
That is a lot of Linux.
That is so much awesome.
Is so cool. And they're running, Debian, come on. That is absolutely...
Yeah. In
fact, get awesome.
Apt-get awesome. Apt-get rocket. Yeah. We have a Debian story in the news docket that we'll get to later today that Debian fans are going to be a big fan of. All right. I teased I have a totally new type of pick.
Okay.
But before we get to that, I want to say good morning to the fine folks over at Godaddy.com.
Absolutely.
Now, Godaddy has got a rockin' deal for us this week. And I'll tell you, I had a whole nother pitch. I was going to come out here and tell people, the one thing that's always true for me about Godaddy is when I think of something that I want full control of that I can just set up right away, like I'm talking like a WordPress site where I control what the database name is and I can just do it like
out of the
3 a.m. when I've got an inspiration to get a project going.
Exactly.
I go to GoDaddy. And, that's why I set up my filter-free blog, which is a companion to the new Unfilter show, over at GoDaddy. And on there, I've been pumping stuff in there. I'm able to install any of the plugins I want. See, there's other sites out there that are just as one push button easy, but you don't get the total control like you get with this. So I've got all kinds of plugins in here that I like.
Oh, so you're not limited.
No.
That's fantastic.
It's great.
Then. Yeah.
But let me tell you about what they're rocking this week because it's only for 2 weeks. It's a very limited time offer, so I want to mention it while I can.
Definitely.
It's the GoDaddy Reseller program. And I'm not even familiar with this, but actually as I start to learn about it because of this awesome promotion, I think I'm going to use this for Jupiter Broadcasting to sell things like, we need like a unified store to sell things that we recommend, to sell gear that we use, to sell shirts.
Sure.
It could even be a spot where Brian could have his software listed there.
Makes sense
things like that. And so something that I can manage, something that takes care of the inventory stuff, something that takes care of the money, the credit card transactions, the taxes. Well, that is what the Reseller Programmer is from GoDaddy. Here's the awesome part. If you use our code, which only lasts just for 2 weeks, it expires on May 24th. If you use our code 50RES3, that's 50RES3, you get 50% off.
Now that's 50%. That's like half off,
dude. That's like half off. That's like math.
That's
like math off. That's like half of math, and then you take it and that's a great deal.
That's the kind of that's math I can get behind. I like that.
I know.
That's my favorite. I can process that.
It's easy math, right? Yeah. That's what I love about this kind of promotion.
This is good.
So this is great because they'll get you rolling with templates. They'll get the cart. They got everything from the .com to the shopping cart. They'll throw a website together for you. They'll do SEO optimization. They'll give you analytics about your site and how the shopping is. They'll give you $100 Google AdSense credit, so you can go spend some money with ads.
Now that matters.
There you go.
That matters.
And of course, you can. They have several templates that you can pick from that are awesome.
That is
that's a great promo they're doing just for 2 weeks. That's the 50% off the Pro and Basic Reseller programs. Again, you got to use the code 50RES3.
And what's that expiration again?
It's May 24th.
May 24th. Well, we better get on that. I'm definitely going to be checking that out.
I know, and they've got such an awesome deal. We talked about it last week, but I had to talk about that one.
That is awesome.
All right, Matt. You ready for my totally new, only for this one show ever pick?
You know what I'm ready for is this. Basically what you just said with a lot more zest and enthusiasm. Yes, I would like to hear about that. All right, let's rock this out.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I've talked about the Roku. In fact, I just recently got myself a Roku right here. I got the
Gotta love Roku.
Roku 2 XS, this tiny little thing. If you're watching, it's about the size of my, well, not my, it's smaller than my forehead. What would you say?
It is a little smaller.
It's smaller than my hand. It's about the size of
hockey puck
of my man boob. It's about the size of my man boob.
It is man boob adjacent.
Yeah. I mean, if you compare it,
you can tape that up there, but it's a great size.
A paleo man boob. The man boob's gotten smaller, but it's a little guy, runs Linux, and of course I think everybody knows it started out as like the Netflix streamer.
It did.
And now you can get apps on this thing. You got like a whole store on here.
And there seemed to be some new app that was coming out here soon.
Yes.
Now, what was that app?
Well, thanks to Kobojar in our IRC chat room, he actually has put together a Jupiter broadcasting app for the Roku. So if you are a Roku owner, we have a link in the show notes. Because on Roku you can just click it and say add to my Roku.
I own one. Yep.
If you got one of those, you can do that. Also, if you just want to add the code directly on your Roku, just use the code JBTV.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, and he just
so I can watch this on my big screen television. Just like the big kids.
And he just recently added the live stream, and also just recently added the live calendar, so you can bring it up on your TV and see what the live stream calendar is. And he's also working on a super cool new feature that's so awesome. I don't want to talk about it yet.
Sure.
But when it's complete, it's going to be something that I think we'd want to show to advertisers and things like that.
You had me watching on big screen, and then throw in the calendar as a side benefit, and I'm sold. And I have a Roku. I'm going to be checking this out when I get home.
I got this, awesome. I don't know, I think this is like $80-$90 off of Amazon. Yeah. It's crazy cheap.
They're cheap.
So
incredibly cheap.
Great little investment, and because it's totally silent, it is not a nuisance for the bedroom.
Oh, absolutely. And there's a lot of other great channels on there too, but the fact that you can get Jupiter broadcasting on your
It does all of the show feeds, and it does the live stream.
That's awesome.
Does the calendar.
So no longer are you required to, like I think we were doing Blip TV.
Yeah, there's a Blip TV app, yeah.
So this is a little smoother. You can just add it, be done with it, and watch.
And what's cool is some of the things he's working on the back end, we can apply to other platforms too. So while right now we're figuring it out on the Roku, we could probably eventually bring that over to the Boxy or something like that.
That is absolutely fantastic. Yeah. And as a Roku owner, that is awesome, and thank you. That's so awesome.
I know, it's a great little Linux device.
Definitely.
All right, Matt. Well, let's do the news. New in the news this week, Matt.
This week, Richard Stallman falls ill at a conference.
Yeah,
that's no fun. No one likes to be sick, especially at a conference.
The show's had a lot of discussion around Richard Stallman, and I wanted to put this at the top of the news docket just because, whatever you think of the guy, you hate it when somebody falls ill. Now, I've heard different reports. One of the commenters on Reddit, who was supposedly, according to him, at the event, says that he was a bit drunk and had a stomachache.
Okay.
But they weren't sure what it was at the time. But the SFS then publicly released that he was in the hospital but has been discharged. He did not have a heart attack, and he's been reported in some places. So there you go.
Okay,
he's been reported in some places. I guess at the time, too, Richard Stallman was actually in fairly good spirits. He even cracked a joke about Spain's current austerity measures that they're going through.
Okay,
which are sort of a hot political area right now.
Well, and I can't speak for him or anyone else, but I've been to a few conferences in my time, and it's not unusual to get ill.
Yeah, boy, that's
life
true.
happens.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I certainly hope he's doing better, and certainly hope he's able to recover, and everything keeps on moving forward for him.
Especially, when you travel. You get,
Well, and planes. I mean, don't even get me started on that. Yeah, I mean, you're going to get sick.
All right, well, let's talk about a big story this week.
Okay, let's talk about the big story.
There's been a lot of stories. We've been getting grief on the show because I haven't talked about Steam a lot on the show.
Then there's Steam.
Yeah, but I'm waiting for something really to materialize there. It's not they're not tracking.
Exactly.
But this one caught my attention this week because EA made an appearance at the Ubuntu Developer Summit. And, it was kind of one of these things where it was pre-announced that EA was going to be there. There's a lot of speculation what that could mean.
There's a lot of hope. I think there was a lot of big name titles were going to magically appear in the Ubuntu Software Center. Unfortunately, that didn't exactly happen as we wanted, but let's not discount them yet.
Well, I guess so. I mean, they are. Yeah, so they put a couple of what they are is it's strange. They're full on like deb packages that you install, but what it does is it brings down like a desktop shortcut.
Right.
Which launches Firefox.
Yep.
And then brings you to the website.
Exactly. So you're not actually installing a game through the Software Center, but you are in basically a very fancy way, installing a shortcut that's going to bring you to the game, and that's still cool because it's inclusion.
It's cool. It's recognition.
Yeah, it is recognition.
It is recognition, and I've actually heard. I read the reviews in the Ubuntu Software Center, and there were actually some people actually liked the game. Couple of things were interesting. EA actually had a speech at the Ubuntu Developer Summit.
Right.
And a couple of points were interesting, and I think this shines light on what EA's strategy might be here. Is EA said they're most excited about HTML5 and WebGL, which boast the widest reach.
Makes sense.
Hillman, which is a representative from EA, and I'll see if I can jump up and get what his actual position was. But he expects China to pick an OS not made by Microsoft.
That makes sense, being that Microsoft is a non-Chinese company. I can understand that. Just keep it local. Yeah.
Is it the cynic in me that's taking that as, well, we think that we need to start playing with Linux now because if we want to make money in China, we got to get it figured out?
Well, I see a bigger backstory here. Last time I've looked, EA's had a bit of a bumpy road financially. They've had some shifts in the road a little bit here recently, and so
bad PR.
Yeah, so I think, and I think PR has a lot to do with it. So I think that they're trying to test the waters without making any heavy commitments financially.
Yeah, and I suppose at the end of the day, if it is just a part of a larger play to try to become profitable in China at some point, as long as it's still good for Linux, it doesn't really matter. And what an interesting world we live in now, where because of an emerging market, us Linux users might benefit from that in terms of software. That'd be awesome. Now, this to me though is sort of a limp first attempt because it's just web links. I mean, they could have done something like a self-contained web instance, or just something.
I would agree, and I think that what you said about China makes a lot of sense, that they're able to, they are looking at the emerging market, but they're also looking at just everybody in general, and, I'm not really completely clear as to what they were thinking by doing web links, other than basically, in phishing terms, they're trolling. Not bad trolling, but trolling to see what kind of response they get, and then maybe they'll step it up with a game that's maybe a little higher up the tier. That will then appear. And that's better. I'd rather they spent their money there anyway.
I'm a little more worried it sets a bad precedence for the Ubuntu Software Center, because now you're letting web links in.
Sure. True. Now, this is fair.
Because you're doing magazines, which is kind of cool.
Okay. You can download them. That's fine.
And I want to support those magazines, so I'm kind of cool with it. But what I'm not so great with is why couldn't I link to some just page on Jupiter Broadcasting and sell it as an app? That's
a good point.
But they probably wouldn't let me.
Well, and that's just it. Are they getting special permission?
Well, of course they are.
But that's a bigger issue, because other people will undoubtedly be asking at this point.
Could you imagine the conversation when they're like, EA called up Mark or whoever, he's like, we want to work with you guys a little bit and try doing something, or however that went down.
Right.
And when it came to, we'll put some web links in there, and they'll, okay, just web links?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'm sure that's how the conversation went.
I'd say it was definitely a letdown, but I'm going to be the eternal optimist. I'm going to hope that...
I hope you're right.
I really hope that they're testing the waters to see, because Linux gaming there's a lot of misconceptions there. And
and it seems to be heating up, especially with the Kickstarter projects that are getting the funding they need to get there. The Humble Indie Bundle has been showing, the Linux users
I think that's
will
the
pay
strongest point, yeah.
And so obviously it's getting more people's attention. Also, as EA is looking for other money spots. We'll see. So let's talk about something else that came up recently, and it's a conversation that's actually been in the Linux Action Show subreddit.
Yeah.
I think there was a thread in there was like, hey, what would you guys recommend I could replace Skype with? It's read in there at some point in the subreddit. And this story comes out from OMG Ubuntu. They're covering this one. They got some quotes. They followed up with Microsoft. Now, I remember just about a year ago when Microsoft acquired Skype, their statement was as follows. We will continue to support non-Microsoft platforms because it's a fundamental to the value proposition of communications, whether they happen to be on your device or not.
Yeah.
Since then, the Linux version has gotten one tiny update.
Right.
The Windows version's gotten like 17 updates.
I'm going to go on the record right here, and I have a reasonable track record in this space. You will see updates on Skype, but it will be for Microsoft's benefit, and it will not be for the end user experience. And the reason why is because of the changes they're making to their backend. It will keep up with that. You're not going to see anything happen.
I agree. They'll make bare minimum backend compatibility changes. And they've said here that they have another version for non-Microsoft platforms that's in the works. Development hasn't stopped. We're still working towards the next update. Can't share an ETA though.
No.
We'll release when it's done.
But, by not sharing an ETA, they're carrying on a long, warm legacy that Skype has carried on for us Linux users for quite some time, where it's the eternal blog post from 5 years ago or whatever it is. So,
You know what I love, Matt? You know what I just really frickin' love is,
what do you love?
Companies that build their entire freaking infrastructure off Linux and then shorthand the desktop client.
Oh, sure. Makes sense, right?
I mean, and not just not just like we're not releasing it because there's not enough people, but like being dicks about it.
Well,
that drives me crazy. And that's exactly what Skype does here.
Well,
but talk about a company that fundamentally makes their back end off of Linux. All of the stuff that they put out there that they control infrastructure-wise is Linux-based. Hell, even the stuff Microsoft has put out there since they bought Skype is Linux-based.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, and just from a selfish point of view, it's especially now with Microsoft running, it's in their best interest to carry on their desire to get into as many different desktops as possible. And Linux is a growing market. If they want to, sell Skype credits and things, why are they not wanting to sell to me? And that's what they're going to end up doing by not making this more desirable to use when I can go and use other clients, frankly.
Right. And you did a how-to a few weeks back on Jitsi.
I did.
Which is a multi-network client. It'll run on Skype,
and
it'll do Jabber, right?
It'll do Jabber, and more importantly, it is being supported again. That has picked up. And it works well. So basically, you can talk from a Windows box to a Linux box and vice versa, Mac OS 10, whatever. Doesn't make any difference. Runs in Java. Yeah. And it's being kept up to date, and it works really, really well. And you've seen the video quality. Yeah. It was really impressive.
What I liked about it is you could actually control the video quality.
Oh, yeah. Which was cool. It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
So, all right. You ready for this next story?
I am ready.
This is an interesting one. It was an interview that was conducted with the developer of Ardour, the really serious audio editing workstation that has actually been featured in, I think, all of Brian's Linux Sucks Talks, where Brian talks about how this guy lives off of monthly donations to do Ardour full time. And it's been it's interesting to see what kind of different donation levels he gets. This interview talked about some things that I was struck by how much he echoes my experience with things and so I highlighted a couple areas. Fantastic interview though. The entire thing, it will be in the show notes, but all right, let me scroll down to an area that I got to. He said so the question was how much revenue does it generate? Is this enough for you to work on Ardour full time?
Question.
And of course I'll go back here.
Sure.
Paul Davis is the developer of Ardour. Paul responds with, our target is $4,500 per month. Occasionally, it makes or slightly exceeds that target. Often, it falls short. I work on Ardour full time based on this income. Though the last couple of years have seemed to do I've seemed to have to do relatively short-term consulting that has supplemented my income by about 10%. My real goal is to grow the income enough to pay some of my other developers who work on Ardour with incredible dedication and have no payment at all. My family lives without health insurance or any clear retirement plans.
That's tough.
That in a lot of ways, it echoes exactly. I mean, because you could group broadcasting and your situation as well as we have a lot of. Yeah, the network is the same way. Some months I make, some months I pay all the bills, some months I don't, and it's a very close thing. But he goes on to talk about what's important, and this is exactly why I do it too. And I just find it interesting because he's a developer, I'm a content creator. Yet there's a lot of similarities here. Having complete control over my work schedule and life is worth something. I'm not sure how much.
That's something I can echo for myself in that a lot of folks have asked me, well, why don't you go and do what you do working for someone else on a more
reliable basis?
Yeah, on a more reliable basis. I'm trying to think of I'm sure editors are watching, so I'm trying to...
Consistent basis.
Yeah, on a more consistent basis, and not having to chase down invoices and things of that sort. So, but at the same time, there's an inherent freedom in being able to work in my pajamas. There's an inherent freedom in, if you, spending time with your family when you want to. If in the middle of the day you want to go out and have a picnic or, those types of things, there's certain freedom there. And also, you have more control over the immediacy of your own project. So if you're working on something like what he is, that matters.
Yeah. It really does.
It really does. Yeah.
And you get more control over it. There's not another, like in my case, there's not a parent company dictating the content.
Exactly.
In his case, there's not a parent company dictating the features. He goes on to say that he said, on the one hand, I'm extraordinarily lucky and fortunate to work as I do on a project that I love. On the other hand, living in the U.S. with 3 children who still need our support and doing so on a bit more than median household income is not always a comfortable experience. No. In general, I prefer the freedom of loving my work over comfort, though, and I try to be optimistic that eventually revenue from Ardour will improve.
I think the only insight I can offer to that is, based on my own experiences, is that if it hasn't worked thus far, it may require a little tweaking. I think it's a great goal, but you may need to massage the way you're generating money.
And
frankly.
I think this point backs up what you're saying, because here's what he says. And, Jupiter Broadcasting takes donations, and this stat is completely dead on with our stat as well.
Okay.
He says, do you have any advice for open source projects looking to adopt this module, the donation model? He says, a conversion rate, i.e. the fraction of people who will download the program and pay for it versus those who will not, of more than 3% should be considered successful.
Wow.
Attempts to find out why people don't, and he gives them stats.
Sure, right.
A conversion rate of 3%, and this is the issue with the donation model, is the 3%.
Wow.
Yeah, it doesn't happen, so you can't go on that.
No, you really can't.
My advice to him would be to seriously look at things like affiliate programs and things like that, because what has been a huge relief for the network has been people using our affiliate links before they shop for work or for home or for special events and things like that, and that's been keeping the network alive. And I would wonder if something like that could keep his project alive.
Well, and I think for you guys, it definitely makes sense in that you're able to take something folks are going to do anyway, and it offers value to the person shopping. It offers value to the network. So a value is experienced all the way around. But when it comes to software,
he might be able to specialize in audio affiliations and things like that, like gear. I don't know.
Something I've been trying to get Patrick from Webcam Studio to do. I work with him a little bit. Is I would love to see more paid. Hey, I'm working on a plugin. Would you like to sponsor that? I'm working on a particular piece of the puzzle.
Sort of like the in-app purchase idea to open source.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the code's open. We're not it's no talk about closing it, but to be able to say, look, there's this one feature that's just driving me nuts that I'd really love to have, much like a software bounty, but a little more controlled, a little more specialized, where you can subscribe to it and then have access to it. You can get the source code yourself, but at the same time, if you want a deb package or whatever, kick down a few bucks.
What this really reminds me of is way back in the day is there was this, I talked about this last week on the show, there was the Zimian project.
Oh yeah.
And you would download this GTK installer, and it would then go through and customize your desktop. I would have paid for that.
Sure.
Something where I can take an open platform where all of my core essential applications are open source. But if I could just install a module, and if that module I have to pay for and is closed source, I'm okay with that, because I can take out modules.
I've been saying this for things like, drivers for Linux wireless devices, for instance. While there is great support, sometimes you do need to compile something, and I know a lot of people would love to just simply buy a app that does that for them. I say the same thing here. Maybe there's some plugins or add-ons that he could do with his software that he can, charge for. Source code's here. You guys can do what you want with it, but if you want that easy use package kind of situation, kick down a few bucks and subscribe. I'm a big believer in subscribing to your donations, because then people can depend on that.
Yeah, that is so nice to be able to project. Yeah. All right. Well, this next story is awesome. I remember at the top of the show I said we got some good news for Debian users. There is one thing when you're starting out in Linux, and that is a really great definitive guide to be able to go to. A lot of people ask me, Chris, can you give beginner tips? Can you give us beginner recommendations? This is a great one. It's the Debian Administrator's Handbook, and it's now completely and totally free.
Like as in zero, costs nothing.
That's fantastic. Nothing, and I believe it's free as in beer. It's free. Nice. It's free as in free. And this just became available this month, and they're doing all kinds of translations. Nice. I believe it's something like apt-get install handbook, or so. There's even like an apt-get.
No, that's cool.
There's even a command where it pulls down like the SVGs and the.
Do you need a PPA for Ubuntu to get that? Or
I think it's only in the Debian repo, but you can also just get the book. They've got it as a paperback or an ebook for free. You can also read it online.
Well,
they've got the whole thing in HTML and in text and all that kind of stuff. This is an awesome how-to resource. It even is applicable to other types of other distributions, because they talk in here about just like general, like for example, here's a great diagram on how Samba works and how Netatalk works for Apple machines and how NFS works. Nice. You could really read this and you could apply this to any distribution. It is going to be Debian centric, and the commands are going to be Debian centric, and the location of the config files. But the config files are going to generally be the same format, and they're going to generally go in roughly the same locations.
Well, and frankly, once you've gotten yourself into config files a little bit, they're not really that complicated once you get used to them. But I also am noticing that they had a successful crowdfunding campaign.
Oh yeah?
No, that's cool.
That is really cool.
We're talking about funding. I'm seeing more and more that crowdfunding is something to pay attention to.
Yeah, I mean, Kickstarter seems to be really making a difference there.
Oh yeah, it is.
And I believe it was because of that they're able to make it totally free. If I remember the story now, yeah.
Well, that's a win for everybody.
Now, one last story, Matt, I threw in here just because you're joining us this week.
Okay.
That is Pulse Audio 2.0.
Interesting.
Is released.
Okay.
Now, I don't really have too much to say on this. Pulse Audio has become one of those things. It's an infrastructure piece. It's not that flashy. Yep. And for the most part, I think you'd agree It's in pretty good shape.
It does what it needs to do. I mean, what we have right now is an existing unit. It, for the most part, for most audio situations, it works perfectly fine.
Yeah.
You know.
Now they're introducing some great features for those of you who use Skype or maybe Jitsi or something like that. They're going to have echo cancellation built in. They're going to have some better Zen support, paravirtualization support, which could be interesting.
Fantastic.
Jack detection. Now I got all excited.
That's a big deal.
Well, I thought they meant jack audio, which is what the Ardura project really needs. In fact, that's one of the things in that interview is the Ardura project guy says that one of the biggest stumbling blocks for him is Ubuntu is the most widely used distribution, and Ardura is a pain in the butt to get running on.
It is.
That's where Ubuntu Studio steps in. This is jack detection for the actual physical audio jack. It's starting with the kernel, in one of the more recent kernels, and combination 330. You can the system can actually detect when you plug in the headphones.
Well, that's handy,
and then it can route audio appropriately.
Well, that's not bad. Okay, well,
better A2DP decoder for those of you who use Bluetooth audio.
That actually, yes, and believe me, I have actually played with that using Skype and Jitsi, and you can actually use a Bluetooth earpiece like for your mobile phone, and it sounds terrible. So hopefully this will help with that.
Hopefully that does help with that. That's what their goal is there. And also, I have no idea how this will sound, but a virtual surround sound module, which might be fun to play with.
It could be very cool.
Yeah. So Pulse Audio, this sounds like, so now when you think of the next round of distributions, this is probably one of the things you're going to see.
I think it's going to be, and more importantly, as long as they're not reintroducing any type of, bugs or anything like that, I'm all for it. I think that's great.
Now, before we go on, we have a how-to segment coming up that you're going to do live in studio today.
I am. I'm actually going to be doing it live today. I'm going to be doing, it's going to be a little something for the newbies as well as little hands-on stuff too. So nice balance.
And I'm excited to say that we already have a completely jam-packed Hangout going right now. They don't even know they're on air. Hopefully they do something super embarrassing.
That's awesome.
So we already have that. So we're going to do our live Q&A after the How and To coming up. But of course, before we go to the Q&A, I should say a thank you to System76 for sponsoring these how-tos. They've been rocking the support of these Linux Action Show how-tos. And Matt's got a great thread going in the Reddit.
I do,
for
actually.
New suggestions.
Basically, and I'll link to this in the show notes, there are going to be times where maybe the how-to that I'm presenting is not really aimed at your segment, really your type of person. So maybe you want to see something done. Throw it in the Reddit post. And like I said, I'll provide the link for that, put it up there. And if we can do it, we will. If it involves something we can do in a short period of time, we'll absolutely give it a whirl.
Yeah, I'll try to remember to get that thrown in the show notes so you can find that. So we got a whole range. Of course, we want to do some beginner ones and we want to do some advanced ones. So, and System76 has sent us that Wild Dog performance, which has been fantastic. It's been great. It's given you just like this machine to bang these things out.
It's been great.
Before we go to that, I want to remind everyone that you can support the network through those affiliate links that we mentioned earlier. If you go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com and scroll all the way down to the very bottom of our website, you'll find links down there for Amazon US, UK, Newegg, which somebody just put a massive Newegg. It's all anonymous. Oh, I love it. Somebody just did somebody must have gotten themselves a great rig through Newegg. We've also got one there for ThinkGeek and Best Buy, Mint.com, Audible.com, Gamefly. By the way, Audible has an amazing Android app. Oh, yeah. Gamefly, and of course, we also have a Chrome extension that you can use, which will get you all of those things. It'll tag all of those for you automatically, so you don't have to worry about it. You just go there and it tags it. Boom.
Nice.
Boom. So excited I smacked my mic. How you like that?
That works.
All right, Matt. Well, let's toss it to you.
Alrighty. Hey, everyone. Today, I'm going to be talking about Linux Wireless, how far we've come, what works now, and what needs a little bit of help to get going. First of all, I want to give you a little trip down memory lane. For any Linux old-timers, you probably are familiar with the old Orinoco cards from the 802.11b era. These were a must-have for some of the older distributions, such as Simply Mepis 3.1, Canopix, probably butchering these names, but you know what I'm talking about. And that allowed us to have any kind of wireless because they worked without any extra configuration. And when you're a Linux newbie, that's kind of where it's at. Later on, same type of card, graduated to an Edimax card running another chipset. But today, we're actually using more and more either cards that are built into the laptops themselves, such as the ones from System76, who are providing the computer for this particular episode, or if we're running a desktop computer, such as the System76 Wild Dog machine, you might want to use a USB dongle. And a USB dongle basically is just a wireless adapter that plugs into your USB port. I have brought a number of them with me today to talk about what works, what doesn't, and why. And I'm also going to show you how to get one of them working that does require a little bit of a do-it-yourself approach. There's a few of them. Generally speaking, for the sake of saving time, I'm just going to plug in one of the EddieMax dongles. This one is running a Rawlink or Rawlink. I don't know how they pronounce that, but if you plug it in, it will pop up here on the desktop here in a second. It should be, there we go. Yep, so we have our wireless network showing up here. So I would be able to then connect to it. And if I look at my connection properties, let's see, let me grab, it would actually show the chipset and stuff. I'm not going to actually connect to it, but as you can see, this particular dongle works out, well, it works really good. It works right out of the box, and I'll include that in the show notes. Now, most of the dongles I have here are pretty good from that perspective. You're able to connect them and you're good to go, and that's great. All these dongles, all 4 of them that I have sitting here in front of me, and I'm going to hold them up, have one thing in common besides compatibility out of the box. They are 802.11g only. You're not going to get any N11. So that sucks. But what you can do about it is some of the next generation dongles, such as this EddieMax dongle, and I will again include all the details for it in the show notes, so don't fret about that, does work out of the box in Ubuntu's last release and this release. Unfortunately, when you plug it in, it will basically, well, actually, I've got a screenshot here. I'll show you. This is what it's going to look like when you look at your network connection. It's basically going to bring up something a lot like this. It's going to show my show me connected and everything. It's going to show me using the RT2800 USB driver. It's a next generation driver for Rawlink devices, and the speed looks really awesome. Unfortunately, it's incredibly buggy and it doesn't work very well. So I've not had a lot of success with it. Today, what I'm going to show you is how to actually blacklist that driver and install one that works. And it not only works, but it works well, and it has worked consistently for forever. It's never been a problem. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually configure. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go and download the driver we need. So I will go do that. We will open up our browser here. Maybe. There we go. And what I'm going to be doing is actually downloading the driver that you will be using. And the easiest way to find this is you type in helps if I can type Rawlink into, it helps if I spell it right, but that's okay. We got Google, it does it for me. Rawlink, it's going to have that for me. I'm going to click on downloads. I'm going to click that right there. And I'm going to be selecting the appropriate driver for that. And I've already done that, so that's really immaterial. I'm going to now jump into my folder, and you're going to basically end up with a package that looks a lot like this right here. And that is going to be something you can untar. There's a few ways you can untar this. You can either right-click it and extract it, which frankly I think is easy enough to do. Or if you want to do it from the command line, I will put that in the show notes and show you how to do it. I personally think it's overkill. When all is said and done, you're going to be ready to start making tweaks to this driver that you've just downloaded, because out of the box, while you can compile it, it won't compile successfully because there's some tweaks that you're going to have to make initially. So I have created a little bash script that's going to basically open everything up for me. And it's going to open up a particular file that is really long, and I'm not going to try and list off the name of it here, but it will be in the show notes. And you're going to see a lot of crazy information in here, just a ton of stuff. And this is very overwhelming for newer users. You're looking at all this thinking, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do with this? There's only very limited things you actually need to be tweaking, and I will actually bring that guy out of the way and show you what we'll be tweaking. So with this file open, all we're looking for after, installing, obviously we do Build Essential and all that, and that'll be in the show notes. But once we have all that set up, we're basically going to open that up, and we're going to be looking for this information. My mouse stopped moving right here. The first thing you're going to be looking for is, does this have a WPA support? It's currently going to be checked off at no. You're going to change that value to yes. And the easiest way to find that in that big jumble of information is generally to just mouse grab that, pop back over to that file, and this is why I use gedit, because I can cheat and use my keyboard like so, and it will say, oh yeah, there we are, and it's going to pop up right there. This will have been marked with an N. I'm going to change that to a Y. Again, same with the next thing. Does this support, WA support, blah, 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 N, no, and I'm going to once again make that change within the file. Now, once all that's been done and you've changed those values to yes, you're then ready to scroll down a little bit, and we're going to be popping into the next file that we'll be tweaking. Every time we tweak these files are not being edited as root or anything fancy like that. We're just editing them as a regular user at this point. And that works perfectly fine. That's going to do what you need it to do. So the next file we're going to enter into will be this guy. It will pop open for me. And we're going to basically in a terminal go to this gedit and then the path to this particular file, and I'm going to be changing yet another little tweak. And there's like some really crazy information in here. So I've basically pasted it into this notes file so it's not quite as overwhelming to look at. But all you're going to need to do is basically look for the piece that has this information, and you will change it to this tweak right here. Again, it's just very simple tweaks, and I will actually show you exactly what you need to do in the show notes for that. It's a little difficult to find, but essentially it's all right here. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's so, you know, pretty simple stuff. Once you've made those tweaks in this file right here, and again, I will make sure that that's provided for you. Once you've made the tweaks and you're good with that, you can save that file. Again, this looks harder than it really is, but once you've actually got the code in front of you, you've done a Control F and actually searched for it, it's brain dead simple, because then you can't really screw it up. And I will actually make sure the show notes cover what to look out for in case you do screw it up, what to back up, that sort of thing. Really not a big deal. The beauty of it is that as long as you leave these files open and double check them, you're not going to have any problems. It's pretty simple. So you've done all that. You're good to go. You've made your tweaks. The next thing we need to do is we need to make sure that for this particular dongle, we're not running that RT2800 USB driver. It's a great driver, but it doesn't work real well because it's incredibly air related. I mean, there's lots of noise and things coming onto it. So for that, on the desktop, we will come back and go to the gedit, and we will go to the blacklist. Now this we're going to be doing as sudo, obviously, because this is obviously going to require some privileges. And I have created a tool to get into that quickly. And I will actually be providing the bash scripts for this so that you don't have to do hardly any typing. Basically helps if I do the right password, so that this makes it easier for you to find this, basically minimizing the work you have to do in the terminal as much as possible, because I know that can be a little intimidating. Now, I've went ahead and actually pasted in the stuff that I want to blacklist, and all I did is I grabbed, starting from here, bad driver, no cookie. That's so I can find it easily if I need to remove it. Copied that and dropped it in at the very bottom of this blacklist file right here, so that these things are not going to be called up with every boot. You know that there's absolutely no way that's ever going to be a problem again. Once that's been pasted in, you can save it and then close the file. You're good with that. And then at that point, you're going to be ready to install your new driver. Remember, the driver that we actually downloaded earlier and extracted. Now, for me, my path happens to be, you know, in my home directory and then in the downloads folder and so on and so forth. And usually you can just make a note as to where it's downloaded and get the path straight. In your terminal, you're going to be making sure that you are changing directory into that directory itself. Again, I'm going to provide you with a, I may provide a bash script for this. I'm not 100% sure on it, but either way, go ahead and click into that. You're going to basically browse that directory. And once you are in there, you're going to then make sure everything looks good. Everything's there. That's awesome. Good, good, good. Come back to your terminal and you will then open up this. We will do that because, again, it's faster to do this than typing on the air. Paste it in, and this is going to bring me to that directory. Okay, now I'm in that driver directory. I am all ready to go. And at that point, I would go ahead and expand that so you can see it a little better. There we go. I would then type in make. I'd hit enter. It would then go through the installation process, kicks up some stuff. Because of the tweaks you made, you will not have any errors. If you don't make the tweaks that I showed you earlier, it will definitely err on you. Once you've done this make, and the make may take a few minutes on a slower PC, that's to be expected, the next step is to then do sudo make install. And once you've done that, grab that here, then you will find that the driver is ready to go. And that will happen almost immediately. That probably takes less than, I don't know, 2-3 seconds. It'll be very, very quick. Once that's all finished and done, rather than trying to restart networking itself, which rarely works as it's supposed to, I would actually reboot the computer. Once you've rebooted the computer, and then you come up here to your network devices and you want to see what's going on, you will now be looking at something like this when you've connected to your network. Now, instead, your driver is just reading USB and all this other good stuff. Now, if that doesn't work for you and you're still having some problems, there's one last tweak you can make that is conditional. Only if you're finding it's not connecting or it's trying to connect and it's giving you issues, there's another tweak to where you can basically edit your modules area. And you basically add an alias saying, hey, I'm going to be using RAO as a something to be recognized. And that's going to be in the show notes as well. And that's basically right here in this little text file. I'm going to be dropping that into the modules area. And I'm dropping that in at the very bottom. So let me go ahead and show you what that's going to look like. I'm going to run that. And it's going to not like that. So, okay, that's all right. But anyway, you would drop that in at the very bottom of the text file. You hit save. It's going to be done as sudo. And once that's saved, now at that point, when you reboot the computer, it's not only going to be recognizing the new RT2870 STA driver instead of the old one, but it's also going to make sure that it's giving you some recognition as to what the device is, so that when you do go to look at what you're running for your network, it's going to actually show up as driver USB, and it's going to give you great connection speeds. They will fluctuate, but I've had them be anywhere from 300 to 150. Just depends on how you're set up. I'm running a mixed wireless in, wireless G network, and it ran pretty well. And of course, as you see, your interface is RA0. That may look familiar because you actually added that as your alias right there. That's how it's identifying itself. The driver, it's calling USB. In older versions of Ubuntu, it may actually be a little more specific and actually refer to it as the RT2870 STA driver. It just really depends on the version of Ubuntu. But this particular setup is running on Ubuntu 12.04, and it runs really, 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 really well. Now, getting all that set up is great. The last thing I want to leave with you is to make sure that you're not running into heating issues. Heating and DNS are the #1 issues with drivers that work well, but are perceived as having faults because people don't understand the fact that dongles tend to get really warm. If you're running a laptop, I recommend either getting a cooling pad for your laptop or getting an extension cord and plugging your device into it that way. Yeah, it's kind of a pain, but it will ensure that the dongle's getting hot, it's not heating up your laptop, and chances are it won't cause any problems for you. This particular dongle is the EdiMax EW7718UN. I will provide that in the show notes. Don't believe you're going to find these as common anymore, but there are similar dongles that are running the next generation of driver that are installed exactly the same way. And I will provide links to that so that you can check that out with the latest that they have. Be sure to check out the Amazon store using our Chrome plugin, and you can actually purchase these from Amazon and run Linux wireless and do so and support the network. Well, that's really all there is to it. Once that's done, reboot, you're good to go. You're running wireless in. It's really, really simple. The thing to remember is if something's not working, double check your work. And if you're sure that you screwed something up, you can uninstall it. And I will show you how to do that in the show notes as well. It's basically very similar to the way you install the driver itself. And you can always go back and use what you were using before. Last thing to remember, if you're running a laptop that has a switch in the front that clicks your wireless on and off, that must be turned on. Even if you are blacklisting, say maybe you have an Intel driver and you want to blacklist that in exchange to use this, you need to make sure that switch is still left on or it will block you out. So that's all there is to it. That's it for me. Thanks, guys.
And that brings us to the end of this week's broadcast. Now, before we go, though, we want to do a live hangout with some folks on the air from the live stream. That's why we're wearing these very attractive headphones.
It was either that or we've entered a cockpit and we are actually flying the Millennium Falcon.
Oh, that would actually be
very cool.
Audio listeners, I want you to just imagine that we're sitting in the Millennium Falcon right now.
That's right.
All right, well, I see the first guy up on the live hangout is Cheese Bacon from the chat room.
Right.
Hey there, Cheese. How's it going?
Hey, man. What's going on?
So,
first,
go ahead. Go ahead.
First, I just wanted to let everybody know, that I appreciate all the work you guys do at LAS and keeping that up, and certainly enjoy the community that LAS has built up. It's a great community.
Well, thank you, sir. And I like your hat.
Thanks, man. I suggest anyone out there that's not in the chat room and joining us for the live feed should probably do that because we have a lot of fun. And also, Matt, I appreciate all your how-tos. The new stuff's coming out. It's really good. I like that. I followed up on one of your the subreddits about maybe adding some shortcut keys and stuff like that.
Definitely.
entry level stuff for Ubuntu 12.04 users and that sort of thing. So
that we can do.
Totally. Yep. I have one of my favorite little Ubuntu 12.04 things is, and I meant to actually mention it during my review, but if you hold down like the meta key on your keyboard or the super key, whatever, I don't know. I'm not sure
super key works. I think that's what most people notice.
There's an actual keyboard shortcuts overlay that will come up and tell you a lot of handy ones. Now, there's one in particular that Cheese was talking about that doesn't show up in there. But if you're just kind of learning Unity for the first time, that's a really great way just to get. It's such a nice, smooth way it comes.
It is. Too. Well, and it's you're able to actually get the information without having to go dig through some text file or help file
or Google it, or
Googling it. Which, if you're trying to figure out why your internet's not working, that can be a problem. So.
Right. Yeah. Right. Control-Alt-T was the one that I was referring to, which is the terminal, which most power users. Not that I'm necessarily should even consider myself a power user, but. That's definitely one of those ones that I didn't want to dig for the terminal wherever I got in. And Unity is just different. And I mean, you can hit the meta key and type TE and terminal will pop up, or you can just Control-Alt-T, which.
But I get what you're saying. It's less keystrokes. It's all about just bam, there it is.
All right. Definitely. Well, thanks, Cheese. Now, on the pre-show here, Nathan had popped up, and I believe it was Nathan, and I was giving you some feedback on the how-to segments. Nathan, are you still in here? Do you want to?
Yeah. I was just saying. I think the how-to segment's quite good, like the way you have them at the moment. With
appreciate it.
You need to find a blend of not stuff that's completely beginners,
right?
Like how to do this and that or whatever, and then you also have the more technical things. But I think the beginner segments are quite good. It's not really a question as much. The beginner segments are quite good because for someone else who's a beginner and they need to know, for example, how to install Ubuntu, is a good example. If there was a segment on that, you could just say, go to episode 203 of LAS or whatever, and there's a segment on the end that tells you how to do it, because most of the ones that you do see on YouTube or wherever are not done very well. There's plenty of how-to things on, say, YouTube on how to install this or that or whatever, but
true.
A lot of them are just terrible.
Right.
And not only that, but I've also found a lot of them are very very release specific. Something breaks in the next release, and that's one thing that always bugs me with a lot of them. And one I've been thinking about doing actually has to do with partitions. I would love to see. While you can do a little of the automatic importing, I would love to see more focus on teaching a new user how to during the installation.
What's a good partition layout? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, actually go with a dedicated home directory. I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah,
that just saves me massive amounts of time.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thank you, Nathan. That's a great one.
Cam is on.
And now this guy, I don't know what his name is, but he's got like something that lives on his shoulder.
Yeah, he's got a little friend there.
Yeah. You guys, anybody else want to toss anything out before we run? I'm opening the floor. This is the moment. If you had something you want to get on the show,
I would like to say that I agree with Crash in that I hate those how-tos that you get on YouTube. They're just like a screen capture,
right.
Of a terminal window, and you're trying to follow along. There's no audio. There's absolutely nothing to back up the how-to.
Yeah.
It's nice to have an actual video. And now with YouTube, you can actually set your time code and go directly to that how-to if you want to.
It's true. That's true. And I agree completely, especially with audio and following up with show notes as well. I think those are both important components for it to be effective.
Yeah, and it's funny because if you go to the YouTube comments where we post every episode over there, there's almost always somebody who posts the time code.
Yep.
And then that always gets like 30 thumb up votes, and everybody can find it real quick and easy, and it's nice.
Understandable.
I like that YouTube lets people do that.
It's cool.
And I wanted to say too, a big up to TechSnap and SciBot and all the other shows. I think I got some grief there in the channel for not saying TechSnap. I do love TechSnap.
Oh, TechSnap's awesome.
Well,
big up to all you guys. Appreciate all the hard work.
Well, thank you, Cheese.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, you guys, for hanging out. We actually have had this hangout going since the news segment, so it's been fun hanging out with everybody.
Wow.
All right, everybody. Cool. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. That was cool. Now, okay, Matt, you can take off your headphones. That does bring that brings this here show to a wrap. Now, should be back to our regular schedule on next week, Sunday. I believe the B-Man will be back, and it's a regularly scheduled episode. We actually got quite a bit of people that said do the XFCE review.
We may need to do that.
I
think it's time. Yeah, I think it's time. We need to commit to that and make
so
that happen.
I'll twist Brian's ear when he gets back in the saddle about that and see if he wants to do it. But I'm going to install it. I actually already did install it on my machine. I haven't switched yet because I'm actually at a point now where 6 months ago I was devastated. I didn't know what desktop I wanted to use. Now I'm like, KDE's great.
Yeah.
Unity's great.
Right.
XFCE, I know I like that. So it's like I'm at this weird spot. So where I'll be going with my XFCE review is it finally the spot I can land where I can be like, yeah, you know what, this does have everything I do want, and if it doesn't have something, I know it's going to get it, or whatever that case may be.
Yeah,
That's kind of what I'll be looking for.
Okay.
All right.
Works for me.
All right, everyone. We'll be sure to tune in live to next week's episode over at jblive.tv at Sunday at 10 a.m. Pacific. Then the Linux Action Show is released in just about any format you might want to possibly get it later on that evening over at JupiterBroadcasting.com. Well, thanks for joining me, Matt.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, and thank you for watching, and we'll see you right back here next week. On the Linux Action Show.
Everybody now.
Close enough.
Numbers, schmubbers.
Good enough for our network. In 3, in 2.